Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, nature is angry, and we fool ourselves if we think we can fool nature, because nature always strikes back, and around the world, nature is striking back with fury. Consider the last few months. July, the hottest months ever. June through August, the hottest summer in the Northern Hemisphere ever, and the second hottest winter in the Southern Hemisphere ever. The years 2015 to 2019, the 5 hottest year on the books ever. Our warming Earth is issuing a chilling cry: stop. If we don't urgently change our ways of life, you jeopardize life itself. Look around. Seas are rising and oceans are acidifying. Glaciers are melting and corals are bleaching. Droughts are spreading and wildfires are burning. Deserts are expanding and access to water is dwindling. Heat waves are scorching and natural disasters are multiplying. Storms everywhere are more intense, more frequent, more deadly. I've seen it with my own eyes, from Dominica to the Sahel to the South Pacific. In May, I went to the island nation of Tuvalu, where I witnessed an entire country fighting for its very existence against the rising seas. 2 months ago, I visited Mozambique, which was pummeled by unprecedented back-to-back cyclones. A few days ago, I was in the Bahamas, where Hurricane Dorian pounded the country for 2 unrelenting days. The destruction was not simply appalling, it was apocalyptic. Make no mistake, when we see those images, we are not just seeing damage, we are seeing the future if we do not act now. Dear friends, someone asked me the other day, doesn't all of this make you despair? My answer was a clear and resounding no. I am hopeful. And I am hopeful because of you. This is not a climate talk summit. We have had enough talk. This is not a climate negotiating summit because we don't negotiate with nature. This is a climate action summit. From the beginning, I said the ticket to entry is not a beautiful speech, but concrete action. And you are here with commitments. Governments are here to show you are serious about enhancing nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement. Cities and businesses are here showing what leadership looks like, investing in a green future. Financial actors are here to scale up action and deploy resources in fundamentally new and meaningful ways. And coalitions are here with partnerships and initiatives to move us closer to a resilient, carbon-neutral world by 2050. I'm very grateful to the leaders and members of the 9 wide-ranging coalitions that worked with great creativity and passion so that we can all get the most out of this summit. And young people, above all, young people are here providing solutions, insisting on accountability and demanding urgent action. They are right. My generation has failed in its responsibility to protect our planet. That must change. The climate emergency is a race we are losing, but it is a race we can win. The climate crisis is caused by us, and the solutions must come from us. We have the tools. Technology is on our side. Readily available technological substitutions already exist for more than 70% of today's emissions. And we have the roadmap, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris Agreement on climate change. And we have the imperative, undeniable, irrefutable science. The best science, according to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, tells us that any temperature rise about 1.5 degrees will lead to major and irreversible damage to the ecosystems that support us. But science also tells us it is not too late. We can do it. Limiting warming to 1.5 degrees is still possible. But it will require fundamental transformations in all aspects of society. How we grow food, use land, fuel our transport, and power our economies. We need to link climate change to a new model of development, a fair globalization with less suffering, more justice and harmony between people and planet. Dear friends, there is a cost to everything, but the biggest cost is doing nothing. The biggest cost is subsidizing a dying fossil fuel industry, building more and more coal power plants, and denying what is plain as day, that we are in a deep climate hole, and to get out, we must first stop digging. After all, it is common sense to give is it common sense to give trillions in hard-earned taxpayers' money to the fossil fuel industry to boost hurricanes, spread tropical diseases, and heighten conflict? Is it common sense to build ever more coal plants that are choking our future? Is it common sense to reward pollution that kills millions with dirty air and makes it dangerous for people in cities around the world to sometimes even venture out of their homes? It is time to shift taxes from salaries to carbon and to tax pollution, not people. Chers amis,
friends, the scientific community reminds us time and again that at all costs we must reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 45% by 2030. We must achieve carbon neutrality by 2050, and we must limit the increase in the global temperature to 1.5 degrees by the end of the century. Strong acceleration in our climate financing is therefore necessary. It is therefore essential that we reconstitute the resources of the Green Climate Fund in the same way that it is essential for developed countries to respect their commitments to mobilise $100 billion a year in public and private funds by 2020 to support developing countries in their efforts for climate mitigation and adaptation. Because even if we succeed in reducing emissions, the drastic effects of climate change are already with us, and adaptation has therefore become an absolute priority and a sine qua non in increasing the resilience of countries and communities and avoiding human suffering. I thank the countries who have already made their commitments, in particular those who have doubled their contributions to the Green Climate Fund. I call for your bravery. Let us move towards a global transformation of financing, a financing that is compatible with a carbon-neutral world. Friends, this summit cannot resolve all of our problems overnight, but it should give the necessary stimulus for us to actively implement the Paris Agreement's objectives. The momentum that we create today should also feed the future meetings that we have, the United Nations Conference on the Climate in Chile later this year, and then next year, the Conference on Sustainable Transport in Beijing, the Conference on Oceans in Lisbon, the Conference on Biodiversity in Kunming, and the Nature Summit in New York. Let us not be scared of being ambitious. Let us not be scared of applying pressure, and let us not be scared, above all, of constantly reminding ourselves of the truth and the reality of the situation. Let us turn to political leaders and to those actors and give them the following message. The transfer towards a green economy will lead to better living conditions and better employment and better health, better food security and greater equality, as well as sustainable growth. If we move together, nobody will be left behind.
Science tells us that our current path, we face at least 3 degrees Celsius of global heating by the end of the century. I will not be there, but my granddaughters will, and your grandchildren too. I refuse to be an accomplice in the destruction of their own and only home. I will not be a silent witness to the crime of dooming our present and destroying their right to a sustainable future. It is my obligation, our obligation, to do everything to stop the climate crisis before it stops us. Time is running out, but it's not too late. So let us heed the calls of wise leaders, religious, business, and especially young people who are taking to the streets to demand that we change our relationship with nature now. Let us lace up our running shoes and win the climate race for us all. Thank you.